and I'm coming you today on our live to talk more about um, sugar and in specific why it's important for you to take it out of your diet and why you should limit it if anything. you know there's one thing I'm talking about a sugar detox, but taking sugar out of, if that's what is best for your body, at least reducing it. But one thing, and I know I've mentioned this before, that when we talk about detoxing, cleansing, all that type of thing, there's kind of a mindset that there's a badness within you. And my feeling is that you are perfect just the way you are, and your body knows exactly what it needs to do. And so we're just giving it the tools it needs to continue to do that. And so as I share with you information, whether it be like this or written or however, always take it in and check in with yourself. How does this feel? Maybe you feel very comfortable with your intake of foods that have that sweet taste. And maybe you hear my words or see my words and go, I should take a look at that and see what I can do. And that's the premise for everything that I do. So when we started last month talking about setting goals, it was, what are the goals that you should set for yourself? And we read and see what other people do and then check in. Same thing here. What are the foods that are best for me? Looking at that sensation of a sweet taste and the role it plays in our life, in that relationship. And so, as I talk about this role of sugar and sweet taste, and why maybe you might want to look at limiting it in your life, check in with yourself and say, I'm hearing what she's saying. Is that what I should be doing? And so that's what I want you to do as I share with you some more information. Because really, um, this added white refined sugar is probably the single worst ingredient in the modern diet. It provides calories with no added nutrients and can damage your metabolism in the long run. In the blog post that I wrote yesterday on my Feeding Your Health website, I have a picture there of the nutrition label from a bag of sugar. And so you look at that and it's like all 0, 0, 0, 0. It will give you some calories, but no added nutrients. And this can damage your metabolism in the long run. Eating too much sugar is linked to weight gain and various diseases like obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. But then that also asks the question, how much is too much? Can you eat a little bit of sugar each day without harm, or should you avoid it as much as possible? Now, before I go into that, I think it's very important to make the distinction between added sugars and sugars that occur naturally in foods like fruits and vegetables. These are healthy foods because they also contain water, fiber, and various micronutrients. So, naturally occurring sugars in my book are absolutely fine, but the same does not apply to added sugar. Again, you need to know and understand what is best for your body. And I feel that added sugars, added refined sugars, just really aren't good in the long run, especially if you do too much of it. Um, Added sugar is the main ingredient in candy, and it's abundant in many processed foods such as soft drinks and baked products. The most common added sugars are your regular table sugar, which is sucrose, and high fructose corn syrup. So if you want to lose weight and optimize your health, you should do your best to avoid foods that contain added sugars. Just looking to make sure I'm not missing any comments from anybody. I've been reading some studies with my sugar detox month, and in 2008, people in the US were consuming over 60 pounds. That's 28 kilograms for my non-US friends of added sugar per year. 60 pounds of added sugar per year. And this doesn't include fruit juices. The average intake was 76.7 grams per day, which equals 19 teaspoons or about 306 calories. So according to this study, sugar consumption went down by 23%, which is, with these numbers, it's still sad, but it went down 23% between the years of 2000 and 2008. And it's mainly because people drank fewer sugar sweetened beverages. But it's really sad that those numbers are showing that kind of a decrease. However, the current intake levels are still way too high, and they probably haven't changed since then. There was another study in 2012 that said the average adult intake was 77 grams per day. So that actually made it higher. I mean, you round it up. So it really hasn't changed from 2008 to 2012. So excess sugar consumption, like I said, has been associated with type 2 diabetes, heart disease, certain cancers, coarse tooth decay, and also non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and a lot more. I talk a little bit about the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in my blog post. So let's see here, just going to make sure, no questions. So then that asks the question, well, what is there a safe amount of sugar to eat a day, and if so, what is it? So unfortunately, there is no simple answer to this question. Some people can eat a lot of sugar without harm, while others should avoid it as much as possible. And of course, this is where genetics and environment and all these other things come into play. But according to the American Heart Association, the maximum amount of added sugars you should eat in a day are, for men, 150 calories per day, or 37.5 grams, or 9 teaspoons. For women, it's 100 calories a day, which is 25 grams or 6 teaspoons. A lot of that has to do with muscle tissue and other differences in genders. And again, that's just a general guideline. But think about that. You know, when we were looking at the intake, it was about 19 teaspoons or 306 calories. And the American Heart Association is saying for women, 6 teaspoons and 100 calories. So to put that into perspective, one 12-ounce can of Coke contains 140 calories from sugar, while a regular size Snicker bars contains 120 calories from sugar. Pardon me, so I'm going to drink some water. So you couldn't even drink a whole can of Coke or eat a whole candy bar if you were going to stick by those guidelines. So if you contrast that, the US dietary guidelines advise people to limit their intake to less than 10% of their daily calorie intake. Pardon me. Maybe some throat chakra stuff coming up. That feels a little better. So if a person eats 2,000 calories a day, if they're going to have 10% of their daily calorie intake of sugar, it's going to be 10%. This, and you have a 2,000 calorie day, that would be about 50 grams of sugar, or about 12 and a half teaspoons. So that's like twice what the American Heart Association is telling us. So if you're healthy, you're lean, you're active, maybe these seem like reasonable amounts. You'll probably burn off these smaller amounts of sugar without causing you any much harm. Again, it's individual, and check in with yourself with what you're eating. But it is important to note there really is no need for added sugars in the diet. I mean, the less you eat, the healthier you will be. So that is if you are, this really healthy individual. So what if you are overweight or obese? Well, if you're overweight or obese, or maybe you're diabetic, you should probably avoid sugar as much as possible. In that case, really, you should not be consuming sugar every day. More like, if you really need it, once per week, or maybe once every 2 weeks at most. But if you want to be as healthy as possible, you really shouldn't be consuming foods that have sugar added to them. I mean, soft drinks, baked goods, processed foods, they really have no place in the diet of someone who has excess weight, as that's what they would call it in traditional Chinese medicine. It's an excess of weight. So stick to real single ingredient foods and avoid processed foods, especially if they're high in sugar and refined carbohydrates. And so you say this, you commit this to yourself, and then you feel the pull, which kind of indicates you may have an addiction to sugar. And so if you're addicted to sugar, you really should avoid it completely, much as anybody who has any other addiction. Sugary junk foods stimulate the same areas in the brain as drugs of abuse. So for this reason, sugar can cause people to lose control over their consumption. That said, sugar is not nearly as addictive as drugs of abuse, and sugar addiction should be comparatively easier to overcome as compared to like a heroin addiction or an alcohol addiction. But that still doesn't lessen its importance in your life. Again, your body, what do you need? What is your body calling for you to do? If you have a history of binge eating, you need to have set rules about your eating. And sometimes people will say they'll have cheat meals or cheat days. You want to look at this whole idea of everything in moderation. If you have these rules in place, like, yeah, I'm going to have one cheat meal or cheat snack on Friday when I'm on a date with my friends or my partner. If you can't do that, or again, that idea of everything in moderation, and you find that you have to have more and more, that is an indication that you're addicted to sugar. So in the same way that a smoker needs to avoid cigarettes completely, a sugar addict needs to avoid sugar completely. Complete abstinence is the only reliable way for true addicts to overcome their addictions. So, just looking again, no comments or questions. So how can you minimize sugars in your diet? I go through this in the Sugar Detox Guide. So you want to avoid these foods. And this is kind of the order of importance, I guess, like I've talked about here today and in some of my other talks or blogs or posts. Number one is soft drinks. Sugar sweetened beverages are unhealthy. They are the biggest contributor to sugar in people's lives. You should avoid these like the plague. Second would be fruit juices. Fruit juices actually contain the same amount of sugar as soft drinks. So eat the whole fruit instead of fruit juice. Then you get the fiber and other nutrients. Um, the next one probably is a no brainer, candies and sweets. You need to drastically limit your consumption of sweets. Right behind it, baked goods, cookies, cakes, things like that. These tend to be very high in sugar and refined carbohydrates. Now, these are all things that if you went somewhere and purchased them, if you're making your own, then you can control and still consider some of those, that sweet taste. Fruits that are canned in syrup. So again, choose fresh fruits instead. Things that say they are low fat or diet foods, foods that have had the fat removed from them are very often high in sugar. So drink water instead of soda or juices, and don't add sugar to your coffee or tea. You might want to try something like monk fruit drops. Again, it is a refined product, but it doesn't at this point in studies seem to affect people the same way as adding a spoonful of sugar. Um, and I did write a blog post a couple weeks ago about other beverages you can use um, instead of soda, and ways you can infuse your water. So again, instead of sugar in recipes, you can also try things like cinnamon, nutmeg, almond extract, or vanilla. Ginger or lemon are also really good. Just be creative. You can find recipes online. I know I've shared some here. If you sign up to work with me as your coach, I provide you with 4 weeks of menu plans and recipes. Um, you can eat an endless variety of amazing foods, even if you eliminate all sugar from your diet. A nice natural 0 calorie alternative to sugar is stevia. If you can, if stevia is okay with you, and like I said, monk fruit. Again, I also wrote a blog post about alternatives to sugar. Let's see here. Oh. So, what about that sugar that's in processed food? The best way to cut back on sugar is to simply avoid processed foods and satisfy your sweet tooth with fruit instead. Um, this approach doesn't really require math or calorie counting or obsessively reading food labels all the time. However, if you're simply unable to stick to unprocessed foods for maybe financial reasons, then here are some tips on how to make the right choices. Know that sugar has many names. Um, I go over some of those names in the class I did. You can have access to that replay if you signed up for the sugar detox guide. So these include things like sugar, sucrose, high fructose corn syrup, or HFCS, dehydrated cane juice, fructose, glucose, dextrose, syrup, cane sugar, raw sugar, corn syrup, and there's more. If a packaged food contains sugar in the first 3 ingredients, avoid it. If a packaged food contains more than one type of sugar, avoid it. So be aware that other high sugar foods, often labeled healthy, fall into the same category. These include agave, maybe honey. Again, you have to check in with yourself, but also organic cane sugar and coconut sugar. Again, check in with yourself. Is this something your body can handle? So it's kind of a warning. You must read nutrition labels. Even foods disguised as health foods can be loaded with added sugar. So the bottom line is, at the end of the day, it's important to figure out the sugar intake that's right for you. Some people can handle a little bit of sugar in their diet, and while for others it causes cravings, binge eating, rapid weight gain, and disease. So, each of us as an individual is unique, and you need to figure out what works for you. So I'll just check back in again. I'm not seeing any questions. So once again, as you listen to this or any of my other posts, feel free to comment and let me know. And again, if you haven't signed up to get my sugar detox guide, it's free, comes with the replay. Then you can listen to that and let me know, how can I help you? All right. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.